Firstly, Julie, thank you very, very much for agreeing to do this again. You were not over keen when I asked you the first time to do it. She said, who's going to want to hear me talking about stuff? And I said, lots of people are going to want to hear you talking about it. And we had a very good session then, but we never got beyond the age of 18, didn't we? So we thought it was appropriate to have another one and touch on other areas of Julie's life that may be more important. But if we just touch on the first things, just remind us where you were born and when.
So I was born in West Runton, maternity hospital, and lived in Holt all my life. I lived for, I think, about 2 years in Bull Street, and then I moved with my parents into Edinburgh Road. We were the first family that went into what some people call Chinatown, up on the, what was then the council estate, and my father died last year, so we have there's some new residents in that house, so it had been my family home and my parents' family home for about 50, nearly or 60 something years. So.
Where did you live on Bull Street?
I think it was the cake shop now.
Okay.
So yeah, the cake shop, I think. It was a one up, one down. I have one memory of screaming in bed at something that I was frightened of, and I can't remember anything else, but I do remember going to the new house that was being built and standing at the door pulling at my mother's dress skirt because there was all carpenters, they were banging and putting the door on and all sorts of things. So that's the first memory I have. I can't remember moving in or anything.
What did your parents do?
My mother was a cook at the local school, at the primary school.
Okay. Where is this now?
At this school. And my father worked at the dry cleaning company, but my father was always very proud of himself because he was a keen sportsman. He played, and he always used to say to me, on my funeral, tell everyone what I did. And of course there was only 6 people at his funeral because it was in COVID, but he played bowls for Norfolk, football. He was on Norwich City's books, he played football for Norfolk, and he also played darts for Norfolk. In fact, I can remember that as a girl, somebody wanted to sponsor him to do an American tour with darts, but he wouldn't leave his family. And he left Norwich as well because in those days you didn't get a very big wage. So yeah,
right.
And my mum played bowls for Norfolk as well.
Wow, you've never been tempted?
I've got too much energy to do what I'm doing now. I haven't got any time to do anything else. I'm too old now anyway.
Did anybody particularly encourage you when you were young? Anybody inspire you in any way?
Not really, but I watched a film once when I was about 7 and I think her name was Gladys Aylesworth, and she was a missionary and she went out to China or somewhere, and I was mesmerised by watching this film of this nun, and from then on I just wanted to be a nun. She just inspired me. I didn't really understand it because I was very young, but she inspired me, and I just felt that I wanted to do something with my life to help others.
Okay.
As a girl.
Now that wasn't a trajectory that took off from there towards
No,
being a nun, was it? So it was
did all the things that young children do and teenagers do, and kicked my heels, and so no, I didn't. I didn't pick it up till I was kind of 23, and then 30 when I came back to Norfolk. Really, I ran a riding school in County Durham. I ran a nursery in Essex, but it wasn't really a vocation, and I was passionate about it, but not dedicated and passionate, and that was my life's work kind of thing.
Sure. So did you have any particular aspirations at that early time, or did your parents have any for you?
Well, I had the opportunity, I loved horses, and I used to look after horses as a teenage girl down in the Thornage Road for another cook who had 2 horses that were stable down there, and I looked after them, and I used to take them on the lows and ride them on the playing fields in Edinburgh Road and all sorts of things, but I wanted to work with horses, and I had a job offered me as a groom at Newmarket, and my father wouldn't let me go.
Oh gosh.
So, yeah.
This was This
when
was
I was
the
15 or 16.
okay. This was the way that daughters were treated at that
Yeah,
time.
he was quite
Like-
Victorian in his ways.
What did he think he wanted you to do then?
He wanted me to go and make money in the Florida Shoe Company that was on the Saxton site where the Holt Youth Project is now. So I went to college to do shoe design and I worked there, and it was instant money, very good money, and I hated it.
So what age were you?
I was 15, I left school and I was there till I was 18 when I went to Butlins, kicked my heels and went off.
So why did you decide to leave Norfolk?
Because partly because of my father, if I'm honest, and I just wanted to just spread my wings a bit and make my own decisions. He was very, very strict.
Sure. So it wasn't a matter of killing time, was it?
No.
It was definitely stretching your wings and
Yeah,
finding out who you were.
Yeah, and we did talk about all sorts of things that happened in Butlins when I was here last. Well, not here,
absolutely. So, jumping a bit then, why did you then, because there were lots of things that you did up there, and I put those in the Chronicle just to remind people in the little publicity about this. Why did you then decide to come back? What brought you back?
Because Norfolk, it was after I went great pricking in France, I did all sorts of things, and I just felt that Norfolk, it just always had a drawback to come back. It was a lovely place to bring the family up, and I just was very, very close to my grandmother and really my family, and it was the right time to come back really at 30.
Okay, and it was the right time to come back and stay, not just to come back and reacquaint
to put my
yourself.
roots down.
Okay. Now, when you got here, you had a range of different jobs again. So, what I've got on my list is you worked at the Red Cross, and you were a voluntary community carer, and you ran a community shop, which was or wasn't Lilies of the Field. I'm not quite
It was Lilies of the Field.
Okay,
I came back and I had family, so that was my priority, and I got married again for a second time and then had 3 new children, so that one became 4, and so I did voluntary work for a long time. I worked for the Red Cross. I used to go into and bath older people.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
so I used to do that and do visits with them, but mainly bathing. And then I done quite a lot of different voluntary jobs and bits and pieces, and then I started up the shop Lilies of the Field, which was a clothes agency.
And was that a sort of what we might call pre-loved clothes now?
It was pre-loved clothes, but I think Harrods would be horrified because the lady who I was in partnership in the shop with, and that shop came about really because we were going into nurseries and selling clothes and doing coffee mornings and bringing mums together across North Norfolk, and the need sort of grew, and we went into my friend lived on the Cromer Road in a very posh house, and she had a wonderful garage that we turned into a shop originally, and then from there on it just grew, and her dad actually started the Viella label, so we had and they also made clothes for Harrods, so we had some very posh ladies and men's underwear, brand new, selling in our second-hand shop, which I think they would be horrified to know.
And this overlapped with you volunteering with children and running the youth group, yeah?
So I'd done some youth work and had a youth qualification before I was 30, and I came back to Norfolk and had a family, and realised when I was a girl there used to be a old hut on the old football field off Jubilee Road, off Peacock Lane, and when I came back and my children needed to be able to have some social space in a safe environment where they could just spread their wings and enjoy themselves without parents looking over them. I was horrified that it had gone and been built on, and there's houses, but nothing had been, it hadn't been replaced. And although it was grotty, and I remember it lovingly as a grotty old shed, and I think John Jarvis might have been involved in that earlier, it was just this wonderful place where you could just know that you could be safe and go. So I was really horrified, and unlike all other market towns, the thing about Holt is unique in the way that Norfolk County Council actually put youth centres in all the market towns, or most of the market towns in Norfolk, with a lovely building and youth workers, paid youth workers, and they were all there for the youth of the town. And unlike all of those, Holt, because it didn't have a high school here, had never had that opportunity. It didn't have a high school, so they didn't provide that facility for it. So, and that was what County Hall told us. So although places like Reetham were smaller and had a lower population of children and young people, because they had a high school, they would get it and Holt didn't. And that was always the same for Holt. So I initially hired the church hall in St Andrews, and went to church at St Andrews, and they gave us the building. So we started up a youth hub there for a while. And although it was very popular, we were serving children that were quite comfortably well off, and of course they need the support too. But the children that we were really trying to reach and were hanging around the town and on the estates wouldn't even dream of coming to that. So we did that work for a long time, and it was called Crossbeats, and it was wonderful, and we had some really lovely times with the children and young people and gave them opportunities, and we had about 50 young people a session. It wasn't really what we really wanted to do, so we passed that on to some other people to run, and then started doing some work in our own house in Coronation Road, where I now live, on the same estate where all the children mainly are based. And it just grew, and we did things that didn't cost any money. We'd go for a hike together with about 48 children following us. We'd play games in the garden, and silly games like how many pegs can you peg on your face in one go, and all sorts of silly things. We'd have barbecues, and I remember one day we just had a new carpet put in our lounge, and we live in an old police house, and we'd knocked some walls about and built on it and different things, and we had sort of open stairs coming into, we've got two lounges, and we've got one that we used at the time that had stairs coming down. It was the biggest one. And I remember they were making popcorn in the kitchen, and I remember David, my husband, was horrified because we had all this juice and things, and we just had this new carpet laid, and he was muttering in my ear, and we were going to watch this film together for the young people, and it just suddenly hit me and how ridiculous it was, because although we had bean bags and we had floor area and we had sofas, and we had the stairs, so they were sitting on the stairs to see the TV, and they were on the landing and they couldn't even see the television. And I thought, they just need their own space. We need to get them what was quoted from me from so long, a shed in the field. That was my dream, to get a shed in a field. So if I could get a farmer to give us a piece of land that was on the edge of Holt or somewhere like that, and we maybe get a porto built in, then they could have their own space and their own identity, and they could take ownership of it, and we would support them.
How did this work for you? Because it's very easy to just say, oh, we opened the house up and we had lots of youngsters coming.
You couldn't do it now.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, lots of things you're talking about, with the nightmare of paperwork and so forth, wouldn't it? But I mean, how did you divide that from your life generally? You know, I mean, we're talking about kids turning up first thing in the morning, or even staying overnight, or?
So no, they didn't stay overnight, although the children's friends did. But like we would go and have a water fight. We would have a hike and we'd take a picnic with them, and we'd all traipse down over the Spout Hills and down to Ledger and Setford or to Alford, and they'd have a water fight, and they'd all get changed, and then they'd all come back and go through our shower. But they didn't ever stay. But I mean, the place was like, you can imagine. But of course, we wouldn't be able to do that now. But we just did things, and it just evolved into this amazing group of young people who just wanted to be together. And rightly so, parents not wanting to have about 8 children in their house at one go. It's not everyone's cup of tea. So, and it just snowballed into that, and that was really how it really all started.
Did it not drive you to screaming point at that time at all?
No, I'm not very good at a lot of things, but one thing that I'm really good at is working and supporting young people.
Right. So come on then, tell us, what is Holt Youth Project? I mean, there'll be people here, there'll certainly be people around thinking, oh yeah, I've heard of Holt Youth Project and I've got an idea of what it might be, but what is it?
So we had Holt Youth Project is everyone knows it really as a youth club, I suppose, and it's so not that really.
Okay. Can you tell us what the difference is?
So it was originally just built. We bought the land, and do you want me to talk about the land and how we got it?
Yeah.
So obviously from that point on, we were very passionate about. This is ridiculous and this is not fair on the young people. We could continue to do it. And we did take them out to places. We took them they used to have a holiday mission up at the beach at Sheringham, and in the holidays for 2 weeks, and we took a small group and people lent us cars and things, and we went in convoy. We hired a beach hut in Sheringham, and we used to take them to the holiday mission there, which did lots of activities, and then we'd come back, grab an omelette or something, and then we'd take the teenagers in the evening and they'd have a swim, and we can't do that with them anymore neither, but we'd have a swim and then they'd go to their various groups. And we did that, and we did that for about 2 years, and then it ended up Saunders coaches arriving at my door in Coronation at the gate, and all the children helping me make all the sandwiches in the house, and there was about 100 children going from the house. And then we'd go with 2 buses, and then we'd come back, and so it just kept snowballing into something really big. So we decided, this is just not fair on them really, and we wanted them to have what other young people had in other towns. So a piece of land came up for sale where Norfolk County Council kept their salt and the sand for the roads.
Okay.
And it was up for auction, and we had very little money. We had some money, but very little money. We had enough for a shed in a field if we could find the plot. And so we knew that we wouldn't, and there were 2 building companies after it for their depot. This land is quite premium, it's even worse now, but it is premium in Holt. So we went to County Hall and asked them if they would consider giving it to us for a youth facility, and they said no. We asked if they would allow us to rent it. They said no, but what they did say was that they would take it down from auction, but they wanted £30,000 for it. This was in 2000. They wanted £30,000 for it, and they'd give us 18 months to raise it. If not, that was going back up to auction. So the whole town and everyone got behind us. There was really key people like Steve Benson and Dick Copaz from Gresham's, and the bank manager and the local police, and lots of people who had so much more clout than David and I had got behind us. And we managed to get raise the money to get the piece of land. But then it took us and the young people were so excited. But then it took us 4 years to raise the money to put the building up.
Sure.
And in the life of a teenager, 4 years is a huge amount of time. And but again, I don't know really how we did it. I have very strong faith, and people think sometimes I'm a bit wayward fairies, I think. But I just believed so passionately that this was such an important thing, and it was vital for the town, and something, you know, that would be there for generations. And so we tried for a lottery bid, and we failed. We had the group of young people, we had the land, we had passionate people alongside David and I who wanted to volunteer and were happy to volunteer, but we failed because of our postcode, because everyone at that time thought Holt was just a very affluent town.
Still do.
Yeah, because of the, you know, there's this Gresham side who are very supportive of our work. And so it always was, it was a no-go. In fact, Gresham's applied a second time for us, about 2 years later, and they paid for a professional fundraiser to put a bid in for us, and we still failed. But we managed in 2004 to open the doors, and about 100 young people welcomed guests and cut ribbons and opened it to run and to what it is today.
So how did you maintain their interest? Because as you say, 4 years is a lot of time. That original group of children who were enthusiastic had moved on, or maybe they were still a bit involved.
It evolves all the time. So, you know, the young people who come through, then their siblings or their, you know, some other children get alongside. So it just rolls through, and the older ones are the role models for the younger ones, and it's how it works. But
during this time, were you still having them in the house all of this
so
time?
we were having them in the house, and we used Charles Rose Day Centre for a while, and I think we used the Red Cross for a while. I can't remember now, but we used all sorts of different places and venues, and we started actually a holding mission in Holt as well, because Sharon couldn't cope with the Holt children anymore by this time, after about 5 years. So we started a holding mission and because it was a beach mission, and all the holding missions around the country were called beach missions, we had this little slogan that when they said, you know, welcome to the holiday mission, then they always used to shout back at us, don't say beach, because obviously we hadn't got one.
Yes.
So and when we opened the doors, we had nothing put in the building because everything had gone on the actual fabrication of the building, and it was built on a shoestring. So unlike having the wonderful facility that you've got here, it's very tired, but it serves a purpose. And the young people helped us design it. So they were in it from the very beginning. They painted walls, they did everything and anything, and yeah, so when we opened the doors, the local fire service gave us a pool table, Bakers and Llamas gave us some stuff, so everyone was like bringing things. I stood at Elsham auction and bid for second-hand kitchens to put in fridges and freezers and sinks, and David's a plumber, so he was involved in the heating and the plumbing, and we had a local builder called Mick Morrissey who put the building together and worked amazingly for us as well. So we were really lucky with the support. And we had a local policeman here called Ray Swain. So it was really Ray who was instrumental in coming round to my house and saying, you know, my grandchildren are teenagers now, and they want something to do, and everywhere I go, yours and David's name keep coming up with working with youth and want to help you get your shed in the field. So he was very instrumental in the beginning of helping us as well.
Okay, so in your mind, who was this for? I mean, it was for young people, yes, but and you said, we all know when you work with young people, there's a group of, dare I say, middle-class children that are easy to make contact with because parents are very supportive. And there's other children who are quite difficult to engage at school or anywhere else, isn't it? So who were you, in your mind, envisaging this for, and how were you getting them?
So Holt Youth Projects exists to provide a safe environment for young people to reach their full potential, whatever their background or need. So originally we wanted to take young people that are hanging around the town away from the town if possible and not getting into mischief, but there is a place for them. You know, they don't always need to be overseen by some caring adults who want to do the best for them. They need to explore woods and go out and do their own thing as well. But we wanted it to be for everyone, but particularly for those who had really nothing and struggled, and for families who couldn't really afford to do things that some other families can do, especially young carers, to be honest.
Sure.
So when we opened the doors, obviously I had my shop and David, as I say, was a plumber, and we had lots and lots of help. And by this time, Dave and I were in our 40s, and we thought we were getting a bit too old to do it even then, even though we're still doing it now. But we thought we'd step back. We've got a lovely shiny building we'll support, and maybe some other families or mums and dads might like to take it on. But everyone would help, but no one wanted to take, because we were having about 90 teenagers coming through the project any one night. In fact, tonight it's on, and there'll be 100 young people and children go through there in 3 back-to-back sessions on a Wednesday evening. And I have to say, before I forget, because I might do, we have been open since 2004. We've never had a fight. We've never had a problem with drugs or alcohol. We've had no damage to that property whatsoever, except we had a fence that was kicked in, and that was from a parent of the estate who owned up to it and came and helped us fix it. And it's because we try and create this nurturing, caring, loving environment where, with respect to them and being youth-led, so they make the decisions, they help us put the boundaries in place. We are quite strict. We are like a big family, and we look out for each other, and we're there for each other. But it's just the most amazing place, and I sometimes take it for granted how amazing they are, because when I have to go to conferences and some boring bits of work that I have to be plugged into sometimes, which I hate, you know, I hear of them saying, oh, we had to close the youth club up because they were running on the roofs, or we had to do this, or it's just so alien to us. And I know that there can be some issues and problems in the town, and we work very closely with the police and the families and the children, because we don't want to exclude anyone if we can help it. But, you know, I just feel that we are so blessed in the young people that we've got in this town, from my point of view.
So just tell us a little bit about how it works now.
Okay.
I mean, in practice, you've got children turning up at the door, and from then on you've got to occupy them or whatever. And there's also, I mean, you alluded to it slightly, but there's always that thing where one generation of children, if they've been involved in something, the next generation say, we don't want anything to do with that because it was what they were part of, isn't it? So how do you sustain that, and what are you keeping them?
It's very much youth-led, most of the work is, so it's mainly their ideas, and we try and meet their needs. We try and deliver everything to them and allow them to have the opportunities, everything that has a positive outcome. We try and support them with life skills, and so for example, tonight, they will be, so the centre's got, within the centre we have a big recreation area which people will recognise as like an old-fashioned youth club type thing. So we've got the snooker tables, the pool tables, all those kind of things, dartboards and everything, and that's quite a big area. And then we have a smaller room that we call the snug, and we do some arts and crafts and things. It's all laid out for them in that room. Or we've got big dance mats. We've got a big screen on the TV, and the girls like dancing, so we've got dance mats and things. And then we've got a big working kitchen. So tonight, I don't know what they're making tonight. I should have tried to find out, but they'll learn how to bake bread. They'll cook lasagnas. They'll do all sorts of home cooking and baking. And there's lots of banter and fun we can have about 12 in the kitchen at a time, so they'll put their names down when they come in the door, if they want to cook, and then it's really like all systems go and back to back, and sometimes it's quite difficult because you have to get all the timings right so the actual food is ready for them to either eat or take home with them before they go out the door. So it's a bit of an art to do all that. But we also have an allotment which is adjacent to the building, so we grow fruit and vegetables, and in all the fun and banter that the youth workers, when they're delivering and showing them how to cook and everything, because at school they don't do so much of this life skill based stuff now. They try and drop into it all about nutrition, all about everything, about food, but they'll do it in a way that they don't think is education really. It's all done for fun. They want to do it, they want to engage, and they want to learn how to do these things, and they absolutely adore cooking. In fact, lots of our young people in our daytime group, which I'll talk about a bit later on, actually become, particularly the young lads, become chefs because of working in the kitchen at the youth project. So we're very proud of that fact. So we have a working kitchen, we have the allotment, we do a little bit of forest school, we've got a fire pit outside, we've got £10,000 worth of amazing mountain bikes that someone sponsored, and a trailer, so we take them out in the holidays to places like Thetford Forest, and we take them on Marrick's Way, which is the old railway line, and we run, in the holiday programme, we run a coast to coast from Carlisle, one side of the country, up north, to the other side, Tynemouth, which is the other side of Newcastle. It's an 86-mile bike ride, and we take a group of 10 young people up there every year. We do an endurance program, get them fit, because we have a gym. We have the gym called the Health Hut, 2 gym instructors as well up there. And we get them fit, take them out, and they do that over two days and 1 evening. So and it's 86 miles of very big hills. But for every hill there's a down, and we certificate that, so they get a certificate, and they sometimes do sponsoring. So it's also, everything that we do is fun for them, but there's always a bit more of a meaning. We try and give them the best possible quality and outcomes to what they do. And then we have a sports hall, which is about the size of this room, and we have indoor cricket, football, badminton, everything and anything. And they play that. So mainly you get a big sweep of boys going into the sports hall straight away. A lot of the boys cook, and then the gym's going on, so they'll have a girls' session and then a boys' session in the gym, and then the cooking, and the cookers will all be on, and then there'll be lots of music and playing in the recreation area. There'll be the arts and stuff going on in the little snug. We have a computer suite as well, mainly for the daytime work that we do. And then we have an upstairs, which we didn't have any stairs to get up there for, because we ran out of money for 18 months. So we had an upstairs with no stairs to get it. But upstairs we have a beauty room. The girls call it Blush for their makeup. And we use it. And one of our youth workers is also a beautician. So they go up there, it's got little lights in the floor, and it's got all the, like if you go into a star's dressing room, they've got all the bulbs around this, and it's really lovely space. It's got a huge door that's made up of Marilyn Monroe that they chose from IKEA. And it's got a sink, and they do lots of beauty stuff in there and girly stuff. But we also do workshops on eating disorders, self-harming, all sorts of things, sexual education, and I think I've heard it all, but then someone shocks me, usually the boys. And so we have that as a part, and we also do lots of counselling and support and mentoring in there, one-to-one stuff. And then next to that, upstairs, we have a workshop which the boys call Drill. It's all a bit corny. And we've got amazing tool workshop in there where we've done, they've made bird boxes and habitats for the country park for mammals. We've done stained glass windows. We've recently done some mural boards that are going into the underpass near the bottom in Hempstead Road.
Yeah.
And also one of our young men's just done one of the murals outside Budgeons as well. So we do lots of sort of big things. They've made wonderful chairs. They're called Viking chairs. They look a bit like a church chair because they've got little hearts in the tops, all cut out like a clover leaf or whatever, out of scaffolding boards.
Right.
And they're called Viking chairs, and then they take all those things home. And it's just really giving them, and then we've done archaeological digs with them. We've done everything and anything really that has a positive outcome, but things that they might be inspired to take forward in their adult life. And in fact, we've got one really famous young man, and we can't take the credit, but he accredited it to us. We had a lovely young man called Alex who came through the project, because a lot of David and I are on the third generation of children now, which is a bit scary, but lots of them have got families of their own, and they'll come back and say, well, we started a little youth club in our village, and oh, we didn't realise how wonderful time we had when we look back, and really nice. We get really lovely letters, which is so amazing. But and we've got quite a few, but this is probably one that an audience would like to hear. But they're all amazing, whether they, are someone who's really struggled in life and then they become a chef successfully is important. But we had a lad called Alex, and such a lovely young man. And everything that we did at the project, he's about 26 now, but everything he did when he was with us, whether we were going to do a beach clean, because we try and get them to do things for the community, so we do litter picking on the beach. We've gone into, there was a problem in Fakenham with youth in Fakenham knocking on old people's doors in a cul-de-sac that was warden controlled and had lots of elderly people living in bungalows, and they were knocking on the doors and causing havoc. And we were asked by Victory Housing if we would go over there and do something positive with the young people. I mean, the idea would have been to get Fakenham young people to do it, but they asked us anyway. We went over there and we did cream teas, and they did some one-to-one. The young people were drawn around the hands of older people and then asked them what they'd done with their hands in their lifetime. So there was an old cowman there, and he reminisced about how he was a cowman, and it was just so lovely to see one-to-one young people and older people together. And we did all sorts of things like that, and it was a really lovely day. So Alex would put his name to everything we did, not all the good things, like, all the lovely trips that we can sometimes do, but all just the nitty-gritty and serving things as well. And when he got to do his options and choose what he wanted to do for his GCSEs, he told the school he wanted to apply. He wanted to work for Formula One. I bet lots of young men would like to do that. Not as a driver, but as a engineer in the team. And so he asked me if I would write him a character reference. And of course I did. I wrote about all the things that he'd done, and we do lots of references for children and help them with all sorts of applications to all sorts of things. So anyway, he got through to the interview stage at Silverstone, the home of Formula One racing, and there was thousands of boys apply, and I imagine that's the same every year. Some maybe girls as well now, and all the other boys got through and got their placements depending on their grades, and Alex got through because of what he did in his social time. And he came back to me and he said, you've got me a placement at Silverstone, I'm going to be in print. I said, no, Alex, all I did was write about what you did. And I always tell the young people, of course your results at school and education is important, but what you do in your social time gives your character and what you're all about, and that's so important to someone if you're trying for a place somewhere or a job or anything. So so he writes to us even now and saying, I'll never forget what you did. And all we did was gave them the opportunity, whether they take them or not is not up, but he did it. And we've helped young men into the army and the navy and all sorts of things as well. So it's very rewarding and very much a privilege.
Well, you're very modest about it, Julie, and I no doubt other people would feel the same. I mean, I just feel exhausted listening to all the things that you're doing. Most of us manage to do one thing at a time. You seem to have any number of balls in the air at the same time, and other things besides. I mean, how do you keep going? Are you like children that just sort of go to sleep like that and then wake up and go 100%?
Well, what we deliver now, I mean, it's obviously a passion of mine, and I always, when I reminisce about it, I just feel so privileged and honoured. Dave and I have done it for 37 years now, and you know, David's 70 and I'm nearly that, and we keep thinking, oh, we always said when we won't go down that ski slope with them, or we won't go down that rubber tube, down that hill with them, we'll know we're too old, but that passed years ago, but we're still here. But and I am bringing on quite a lot of youth workers now, and we've put them all through their qualifications, and for me, at the Youth Project, we've got about 11 staff now, and we have a huge band of volunteers, and the staff are really important, because for 21 years, obviously I didn't get paid, and I never did it for the money. It wasn't about that. It was the passion for me is to see young people achieve, and you know, people might pat me on the back sometimes and say, oh, that's amazing, but actually, no, it's the amazing thing is to have the privilege of seeing young people turn their lives around or succeed, and I can't tell you the joy, how many times I cry in a week, because it's just the most amazing thing. So I'm the one who's honoured and lucky to do what I do.
And speaking of which, you have been honoured, of course. You've been awarded the BEM, the British Empire Medal, haven't you? Would you like to just tell us about that? How did that come about, and what does it mean to you?
Well, if I go back a bit, before that, we were thrilled as an organisation, which includes all the volunteers, all the young people, everyone who's involved or ever been involved. We received an MBE, which is even higher than what I got, and that's for every single person. That's called the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service, and I think we were the first youth club in the whole country to get it, which was crazy. So that's the most important thing for me, because it's, you know, I might be gobby and talk about it till the cows come home, but everyone who comes in and helps, you know, whether because the youth workers, we all wash up, we all do everything. No one's above anyone, and equally, it's so important that everyone feels valued and special. And so that was the biggest honour for me, that all of those people who'd ever helped and still help are part of that. That's their MBE, which is much higher than what I've got. Right,
okay. But tell us about the other, and presumably you had to go and collect it somewhere. How did you feel about that?
Well, we've been. It's really difficult sometimes, because everyone who stands in front of you is valued and important and equal. And of course, it's lovely to go to Buckingham Palace, and we have been fortunate enough to go twice. And once we were fortunate enough to take 2 young people with us, but then that causes its own problem, because who do you choose out? We've got 200 young people coming through the project each week, and how on earth do you choose them? They're special moments and wonderful. I always think of my mother, because she didn't see any of that, and when I received that, and when we go to places like Buckingham Palace, I always think of my mum, because she would have loved it. In fact, one of the things that happened before that was Prince Charles, and I'm very naive, and I'm rubbish in the office, I have to say. And we had Maggie, a lovely lady called Maggie Simpson, was doing doing some admin stuff for me and paperwork, and I was out with some young people, and she took a phone call at the Youth Project, and someone said to her, we would like Julie Alford to go to Sandringham. Would she go? It's December the 4th, and it was, I don't know, 6 o'clock at night. So she said, well, knowing Julie, I'll say yes. So when I came back, she came and said, oh, someone somewhere in Sandringham asked you if you'd go to this meeting. So I said, oh dear Maggie, it's cold and dark and I've got to drive all that way. Anyway, I thought it was in a village hall, going to a meeting with someone called Voluntary Norfolk, because we used to have these meetings that I had to sometimes go to, and they were all voluntary organisations like ours, and you all got together and they shared information and they tried to help. So I thought, oh, they're going, and they tried to use village halls to pay money to support village halls. So I thought it was in a village hall. And then about 2 days later, a letter came, and I saw it had like a gold crest thing on it. And I said to Maggie, oh, the Royal Mail have changed their stamp, thinking it was just a fancy stamp. And I opened it up, and it just said, His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, this requests the pleasure of blah, 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 which at one point I fell through the floor. But I was allowed to take one young person there, and it was really a lovely experience. And I thought, which was amazing in itself, and I chose a girl who'd been a young carer, and she'd been also in care in her life because of her mum's situation. And we actually brought her on as a youth worker and trained her up, and she moved on afterwards. But she was a young girl, and I chose her to go with me. And poor old David never gets invited. And off we went, and I had to go to some sort of conference in Norwich. Again, I don't go to any of these anymore, by the way. And so again, it was all information sharing and everything else. And I was saying to everyone, are you going to Sandringham? Are you going to Sandringham? Because I thought, once I knew it was Prince Charles and we were going to this dinner and everything else, I thought, well, there's going to be loads of charities there, and he's going to say, very well done, and all this. And we were all going to be there, and that was that. And everyone was saying, no, no. And I just was so baffled, because all we had was what you've got to wear, you can't take your phone, you've got to be here at this time, what you've got to do. And I had no idea. Anyway, no one knew. And then I was at home hoovering, and the phone rang, and it was Clarence House. And they said, are you ready? And have you got your young person all ready? And I just said, who's actually going? Because I was so confused and baffled. And they said, and the lady on the phone said, well, it's you and your young person and 250 of the richest people in East Anglia. And basically what it was, and I thought, I nearly fell through the floor again. And then what it was, he had done so much research on us. He came in, the young girl, Louise, who went with me, she had the opportunity and was asked if she would introduce him into the room. And she was so excited, honestly. She was so excited. It was so lovely to see her face was such a picture. And then he just got up after we'd eaten, and he said the importance of supporting charities. And he knew all about us. He just ran on, and I just stood there and like, is this really happening? And he just talked about us as a role model for the county and how, you know, all this stuff and da-da-da-da. And then he just pushed me in front of like Bernard Matthews and someone else. And yeah, so I remember when I drove my little Beetle up to all these very big, massive Jags and whatever they were, Bentleys and everything, and there was my little Beetle. And I kept thinking, poor David at home. And we, like ladies do, we thought, we must go to the toilet. And we went to the toilet, and as soon as you walked in, the light went on, and there was all of this amazing pipe work, and I just so wish I could have had a photo to show David, because he was just so fascinated by all the pipe works. And they had on the walls, there was all these quotes and cartoon pictures of how, with the corgis and things, that like the papers had took the fun out of the Queen and everything, and she'd got them all hanging everywhere. And then when we got back in the car, we sat down and we just both screamed, because we thought, did that really happen? That was the most bizarre thing ever. But we've been lucky. We've been down. I've been able to take a young lad who was on suicide watch when he came to us, down to the House of Parliament, and to Whitehall, where we were were asked if we would talk to these television presenters who were psychiatrists and psychologists, and all of these very, very posh, high, wonderfully amazing medical doctors. And they asked us to do a presentation. Norman Lamb was there and asked us to do a presentation on our work on a PowerPoint to talk to us, because they were all working on a white paper with young people with mental health, and they'd chosen us and which is another part of our work in the daytime, as a success in and how it was run for the government to look at what we were doing. And I remember this young man he'd never been out of Norfolk. He came from Cromer, and he'd been on suicide watch for quite a long time. Lovely young lad, really clever. And his gran had to sell her house and move into the family house so that Mum could go to work, so that he wasn't left at all. So they had to watch him all the time. And he came to us and in our daytime work, and he'd been with us 2 weeks, and Cromer Academy teachers came, because he should have still been at school, to see how he was getting on. And I heard him say, "It's the most alive I've ever been in my life." And I cried that day as well. And he went on to be the most amazing young man. And I took him down, they sent a taxi for us to go down to Whitehall. And we got there, and I said to him, because I said to him, "Would you like to go?" And he was really nervous to start with. And I said, "Well, you can just sit there and I'll talk a hind leg of a donkey, and you can press the button and they can look at the slides, or you can interrupt me, or you can, whatever you want to do." He said, "No, I'll just sit there and I'll press the button." And I only said 2 sentences, which is not like me. And he interrupted me, and he just delivered the whole thing and talked to these people. And I remember crying on that day as well. And it was just the most amazing experience. And a local girl in Holt called Alice, who's just had a baby, we were asked to go down. I was asked to go down to Parliament to talk again to some MPs in Parliament this time. And I said, "Well, actually, can I bring a young person, because young people can talk for themselves?" And they said, "No, no, no." And then I said, "Well, I can't come. I don't think I can come." Mm-hmm. And then they phoned back a few days later and said, "We've decided you can." So this girl called Alice, who I won't say who she is, but she lives on one of the estates here. And she wrote a speech, and we went down, and we've got some amazing pictures of her in the project, of standing in the corridors of Parliament waiting to go in to deliver her speech. So we've been very lucky to have been recognised really across East Anglia and really the country for our work. And I sometimes think if we're as good as it gets, it's a pretty bad state what the government's doing, to be honest. Because we're just a charity. We're just loving the ones in front of us and trying to make a little difference. And
sure.
So it's lovely, but it's frightening at the same time.
And it has been a struggle for you, hasn't it? Because there was a time a little while back when you were hoping you could take more of a back seat, and then it became complicated again, didn't it? You had to step up, and so it's amazing that, I mean, you say all these things, I haven't done much, and it's the kids, but so often in these situations it needs somebody at the centre of this whirlwind that holds it all together, and that somebody is obviously you, Julie, and somehow you managed to persuade, against all the odds, somebody to give you a large amount of money to do things. You were telling us at the bar that you've just got somebody else who's agreed to give you some quite a large amount of money. So do you want to just talk about that for a minute?
Well, I think it's really important to say what we do really, because it's all very well saying, they come in, they do this, that and the other, but so we run, obviously, the youth, what we call youth hubs, which are like the old-fashioned youth clubs, which is like tonight. They can sit there and they can just talk to their mates. They're in a safe environment. We don't do drop-in, they don't go in and out. We're accountable to parents, so if they want to go home, we will just ring the parents and say they're actually going to leave a bit early, and that's really important to us. So we run a senior youth hub, and then we run junior youth hubs. So we run youth hubs now from the age of 6, and we have got about 200 members. They're all really, really busy. The younger groups are very much structured, so we run them, and they're tight ships, and they just do funny things, and they're really happy, and you know, obviously we do lots of programs. And then, as I say, the youth is youth-led, so they can sit there all night, or they can learn to make bread, or they can go and paint a mural, or whatever they want to do. And then in the holiday programs, we do lots of activities like the Hadrian's Wall and all sorts of things like that. And that's for Holt and surrounding villages. So the youth project belongs to Holt. It's for Holt. It's not anyone else's. It's their building. So it should be there for generations to come. So that is just purely for Holt and surrounding villages. And then we run North Norfolk Young Carers, which is a really emotionally difficult part of our work. We run that, we've got 78 young carers, and it's very, very, as I say, emotional. We run that on a Thursday evening.
I want to just, before you go on, just explain what a young carer is, in case.
So a young carer is someone who is looking after someone who's seriously ill in their family. It can be a mum, a dad, or a brother or sister that's got a life-threatening condition or a long-term condition, disease. And the children get referred to us from schools, from social workers, from doctors. We work really closely with Holt Medical Practice and other practices, but particularly Holt. And these young carers get referred to us, and we then do a home visit with them, and we meet them so they can see us on their own, in their own house, and we get to see the needs of the family. We can see if we need to do any further support for them, and it's really, really sad because, you know, there's no stigma attached to that. Some of the mums and dads feel very, very guilty that life's thrown them, say, cancer or something in their family. It might have been that dad, you know, was working and he got, you know, struck down with a serious disease. Mum was maybe had a part-time job and was looking after the children or whatever, or just running the home. And then, of course, all their finances go out the window, and it's really, really sad. And then the children suffer because, you know, the partner's trying to keep the house going and doing everything else, and sometimes, you know, not everyone's built to be able to run a home and clean and cook and everything else, and also the children, and everything gets cut down, and then the children come somehow, without anyone meaning it, they get down the pecking order what's important, because all the attention is on someone that's dying, or, you know, and then it's all the stress and anxiety that brings. So, and often not always, but a lot of the children that we deal with don't have the support around them of, say, nannies and granddads or other people or it might be a one-parent family, which is even worse. So there's a lot of guilt attached to parents which shouldn't be there, and we try so hard to support them in that. But young carers, they might be late for school because they've got jobs to do in the house. They might be having to wash and dress their family, the person who's ill. They have to do the shopping and things like that. They don't get their homework done on time, then they get into trouble at school. They may be a little bit more unkept because there's not that extra loving touch on them, and it's nobody's fault, but that's how it is. So and then often they might not have the right trainers on their feet like somebody else would have, or their clothes aren't quite up to trend. So, and they're often bullied because they might be a little bit more grubby or whatever, and they don't get opportunities to go out to things that other children might take for granted, like maybe going to the cinema sometimes or whatever. And sometimes they have like a milk or a biscuit for their meal or something. So we try and give them once a week a nutritious meal. Sometimes, like tomorrow night when we're meeting with them, we're going to Gresham School and they're going to, as I say, we've got 78 young carers. They'll feed them, so they'll have a nutritious meal, and we're doing some activities in Gresham's buildings which have got fantastic things. So that helps us a bit with our funding and everything, because obviously you can imagine trying to feed and look after them.
Sure.
In lockdown, when you zigzag across North Norfolk, it used to take us, we used to do bag drops of clothes and food and activity bags, and it used to take us we had 2 buses full of all bags and things, and it was 200 miles of zigzag, and it's not, North Norfolk's quite big really,
Yes.
but they're all isolated in Hempstead, and we've got them as far as West Raynham. We've got 2 young carers, because the County Council call North Norfolk right up to West Raynham and Munsley, and we've got them in Sharon and Crome and Fate, all villages, Clyde, Lakeney, obviously Holt. So we have to look at who is most needed on a Wednesday night, because we can't take them all out at the same time. We have a 17-seater minibus that we rent, because we couldn't reach the children if we didn't have that. And Gresham School give us a second 17-seater bus. So we work all the routes that we have to go around, just to pick them up and then do something with them. Sometimes we just go crabbing, or we might take them we sometimes go crabbing at Blakeney and then go on to their park. Sometimes we might be able to do something a little bit nicer for them. So that's a really big, and then we do one-to-one mentoring and support as well with them.
Gresham's has been very supportive of you.
They have been very supportive. The other thing that we're finding with the young carers, which is really sad, is we've got young carers as young as 6 at the minute. And over half of our young carers at the minute are in primary school.
Yeah.
So it's a very much, and it's hard to come down from that. When you've been out with them and then you've dropped the last ones off, no one wants to go home. They all want to be the last one out of the bus. I mean, it's really sad. And when you go home and then trying to come down off all that, that's,
Sure.
I don't, that's a
And
night.
as well as that, you run a scheme for excluded children from schools, don't you?
Not excluded children from school. We run a project called ACT, which is 3 days a week, and they are for young people who can't get into school because they've got mental health problems. So they might have, it might be panic attacks, it might be they self-harm, it might be we've got one boy who 8 weeks ago took an overdose at one of the villages 3 miles away, ended up in hospital, had to have his stomach pumped. Some of them, it goes in a pattern, so they start to miss school, the schools will call the parents in, they'll threaten them with court and about their attendance, and then they'll identify there's a bit of a problem, they'll go to the doctors will send them to something called CAMS, which is the Children's Mental Health. There's a 9-month waiting list for them to be seen. So in that time, someone who's escalating mental health is horrendous, but the doctor might write a letter to say they don't have to be in school because they've got a mental health condition and they can't cope with it. And then they might be isolated in their house for up to a year sometimes, and which makes it their problem even worse, and they then are isolated and don't even mix and come out. So we pick them up at various stages, and they come to us, and we provide a program which is which builds confidence and self-esteem, and helps those children in a non-threatening environment. We do lots of nurture and support, and we celebrate the tiniest little bit of progress that they make. And they come to us, and we've been doing that since 2013, and every single one of them that's been through the project, we take about 12 at a time. They stay, they can come in and they might just stay for 3 months, and if we can get them back into school, that's great. But sometimes it takes longer, so they stay with us till they reach their full potential, and sometimes that could be 3 years. But for us, it's not about a quick fix. like you have a 6 sessions, you go to a counsellor, then you're out the door and you're on your own. We see them through, and they take tiny steps, and we celebrate, and we just celebrate with them what they've done, and then at their own pace they might take the next little step. For example, we had a girl from Clyde whose dad had a serious car accident, and from that minute on she wouldn't get in the car. She had terrible flashbacks and panic attacks, and because she needed to go to school, because she was in Clyde, she wouldn't go out of the house, she wouldn't go anywhere. And so we worked really hard with her. So they all have their own bespoke program according to their needs, so whether it's a self-harming or whatever. So we go to her house, and then we sit and we build up a friendship and a relationship with her, and we take her for a little walk, then we get her to stand next to the car, we celebrate that she stood next to the car, we might open the door a tiny inch the next time. It's a long process, and if you looked at it, you could think, well, that's very costly. But if you measured that against someone having to have mental health problems and not being able to work for the rest of their life, they completely get better, and that's what it's about. So that young girl, we got to the point where the door was open, and then she'd sit on the seat, and it isn't, well, you've done that, so let's just try this at the same time. No, she feels comfortable doing that. The next time we'll see if she wants to do something else. We put the key in the door, in the ignition, we turn the... So it's everything like that is a very long process. But if the outcome is she's completely healed and better, then you've achieved your goal. The government hasn't got someone who's having to rely on benefits for the rest of their life, possibly. And they're all, so everyone has a bespoke program, but they come together in a nurturing family group at the project, and then we help them either to get a placement in college, which we sometimes sit with them to help them go on the buses, and whatever it takes really for them to succeed.
What do you do to relax, Julie?
It's a vocation for me, it's my life, and it's just a pleasure and an honour. So it is emotional, and I'm not saying, especially because we have, as you know, 24/7 telephone helpline, which is me and one of my youth workers. But it's just an honour and a privilege. I don't see it as work, so it's...
So do you ever envisage retiring?
So I've told the trustees that I will give another 2 years. They think I'll be there on my Zimmer frame, I think. But there's some other things that I want to do. I'll always try and raise money for the youth project. I'll always be there supporting. But, it's important for other people to come through. It's not about any one person. Anyone can
do
that.
What are the other things that you want to do? Are you prepared to share those, or are those secrets?
Well, so I've always felt, as I said, that I've got quite a strong Christian faith, and I've always really been led by that. And as I say, it really inspired me as a 7-year-old about being a nun. And sometimes I think, I would have still liked to have been there. But I have also felt for the last 10, 12 years that to write a book, not just about the youth project, but there's lots of things. And it's come up so many times, and the people said, you should write a book. And then I think, I've heard that a few times now. And so I take it on board, and actually I was, the last time it came up, someone said it to me, and they said, actually, I'm an author and a publisher and blah, 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 whatever. And so they really sort of encouraged me, and I did start. Well, so I know that I will complete that at some point, but obviously right now my priority is the youth project.
Okay. So just to finish off with questions here, if you were were in a position to talk to your young self now, is there any advice that you would give yourself back at the beginning?
Obviously, my love of horses has always been there, and I did run a riding school for a while. But I look back, and I had some quite hard times growing up, and I had some hard times, and you can look at things and think that's really horrible. but that was my university. That was where I learnt so many things that I was able to use in what I do now. So I just would say to myself, if I was born again and grown up, you know, celebrate everything, look at everything, and everything has a purpose, and in everything that's negative you can take a positive, and just go through those bad times and try and use them for good and not mope about them, because I'm sure I did when I was young. Just one thing I have forgot. We also run, so we do the young carers, we do the youth hubs, we run the Act with the mental health group, and everything has happened because there is a need. We haven't thought, oh, this is a good idea. It's always the need has come to us, and so we've evolved to meet it. And we're known across Norfolk as this Can-Do project. And 3 years ago, we started a new group up for young men of 18 to 25, because at the time there was this, I don't know how many people realise this, but there's a high suicide rate in North Norfolk with young men, and there was a big, at the time of us looking at it and they actually deciding that we needed to do something about it, there was a big spread in the EDP. There was all these young men's faces on the front of the EDP and all inside, and the very same week we'd had a young man who'd been with us previously come to our door and as a young man and in terrible state and needed some help. So we were able to help him, but the worst thing about a week later was that a young man who 10 years previous had been with us for a very long time, all his youth, had got married, and Dave and I get the chance to go to loads of weddings and christenings, you can imagine. And we'd lost track of him. We knew he'd got married and everything had gone pear-shaped for him. He'd moved in with his in-laws to try and raise some money for a mortgage. We didn't know where he was, and we didn't know anything except that he'd got married. And the marriage that hadn't been the best thing, and it'd all gone wrong, really, because of that situation of living all on top of each other. And he'd made a noose, and he'd gone to Kelling Heath to try and kill himself. Oh, sorry.
Anytime.
Anyway, he'd gone on there to kill himself. He was eyeing up the trees, and he said, you know, he had it in a box. He put it in a box and put it on the seat and got it out. And looking at all these trees, and he suddenly said he didn't know where it had come from, but he suddenly said, Holt Youth Project and Julie and David, he said, you just flashed through my mind, and thank God that we did. And he said he literally threw it into the back seat, and in his words, he drove like a bat out of hell to the youth project. We were there with the ACT group, the daytime group. He sobbed, just sobbed on me for about 2 hours. We didn't know what was wrong with him. He eventually shared everything. He allowed David to go and get it out of the car and throw it in the bin. And he was just in the most terrible state. Anyway, the amazing thing is we were able to help him. We were able to nurture and support him, and then encourage him and his wife to go to marriage guidance after we'd sort of helped stabilise him. And now they moved out of the family home that they were living in and went to live on their own, and they're renting in Sheringham, and they've got a little girl now, and he changed jobs and they're so happy. So and I saw him, we were running an event at Stoddy Gardens 2 weeks to try and raise some money, doing the teas and cakes, and he actually came and bought cake with his family. And I said to him, do you know we've started a men's group up now, that we have 12 men that are very vulnerable and that we meet. In fact, they went out today as a group, and it's all because of you, Matthew. I said, it's all because of you. And he was just so thrilled to think of that, turning that negative horrible time, and we've done something about it, and we now run a group called Reboot.
Fantastic. Now we could go on and on and on for ages. I mean, I've got questions here still that could go with, but we've been going quite a long while. Shall we just say thank you to Julie now? Thank you for sharing all that with us, and thank you on behalf of all the people that you've helped over the years. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to ask a question, something they feel we haven't touched on?
I just told you something. I've never met you before, but I used to play bowls with your father, and it fell upon me one day to write the card out. So I needed people's names, who was going to bowl first, second, and third. So I said to him, what's your name? And he said, I'm Judy Alford's father. And I said, Julie Alford. Yes, but what, do you know her? She's got the BEM. Everybody knows her. And I'm so proud of her. And the game was waiting to start, but we couldn't because he wanted to tell me how proud he was of you. And having listened to you tonight, I now know why.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That means a lot. Thank you.
Anybody else got a question they'd like to ask? No, you're exhausted, aren't you? You've been slipstream of air, and shall we just finish by saying, is there anything you regret, Julie?
I don't know, not for 1 minute. I mean, it wears me, I'm constantly tired, you can imagine, but I have a huge amount of energy. Just to say though, we do host a food bank at the Youth Project as well, and we now have a pop-up shop because in lockdown we identified another need, which was clothes poverty for children. So we started putting bundles of clothes together from here, there and everywhere, and we now give free bundles out on a Monday, and obviously we can't do anything without any money, and we have been truly blessed with the support. You know, a pound from someone, or even someone coming and washing up and helping us is so important. But we have been so privileged, which is what you wanted me to just share, that somebody who runs a big business of very posh sheds is now on June the 22nd, they're building a shop for us in our car park, and a storage, because the pop-up shop is in the middle of the Youth Project upstairs, and all rails are closed and everything. And we're going to be giving bundles of clothes so people can come regularly, and they'll be able to have a cup of coffee in there, and they'll be able to pour their hearts out while they're looking through the clothes and everything. So that's our new extension of Evolving Need.
Fantastic. In fact,
And it's £125,000 if we'd have had to buy. Of course we wouldn't. We'd have had a shed in a field somewhere. But they're coming and they're putting this amazing wood in. It looks like a cricket pavilion. It's amazing. So, you know, it's not just about me and David or the youth workers, it's about everyone who contributes. And for you even listening, I mean, I don't know why you want to come and hear this, but just to be interested in our work, and we're just so grateful.
It made me think, Anthony, we often have a donation bucket, don't we?
No, we don't need a donate. No, we don't need.
We could have one tonight, couldn't we? Which would allow people to put something in for the youth project. So.
Seriously, I didn't say that for that.
No, I know you didn't.
But we are a charity, and we've been very blessed with, and I'll let you know in the secret, Olivia Coleman is going to be our new patron, but we haven't let the world know yet.
Ah, okay, fantastic.
And Disney did a film called Ron's Gone Wrong. I mean, I could talk forever, as you know. But Disney has there's this animated cartoon film for primary school children called Ron's Gone Wrong. And it's out on Disney and it's been out anyway. Olivia was the voice of the grandma. Anyway, she has been out with us secretly and sneak, because she's very low profile, she wants to be, but she has been out with the young carers with us, and she's going to get more involved when she's not so busy. But anyway, they did this film, and in this film it's very sad about this little boy, and nobody likes him, and he sits on a blue bench that's very pivotal in the film, and it's called a buddies bench, and all these conversations happen on this bench. Anyway, Disney have given away 2 benches in America to schools and 1 bench to Holt Youth Project, Norfolk, England, and we've just received it, and it's got a plaque on. We've hid it up from the children because Olivia's going to give it to them, and we're going to watch the film with popcorn again. So yeah,
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah.
Well, shall we show our appreciation?
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
I don't know what else to say. I'm speechless, really. There's fantastic, and there's so much that you could go on to tell us of other things that you've achieved and that have been done by the children, for the children, with the children, by the children, etc. Which is amazing. So we just wish you every success for the continued progress and development of the youth project.
Just the energy to keep going.
Indeed.
But they're the stars. They're the young people in the stars.
Sure. Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you again. And thank you to everybody for coming. And Anthony's just got a bucket and he's going to put by the door. So if you feel like putting something in, which normally it goes towards the community centre, but I'm sure tonight they'd be very happy to go to the youth project. And I'm sure Julie would be very happy to talk to anybody who wants to know more, or if there's any way that they can help.
Yes, if anyone would like to volunteer, you'd be very welcome.
So thank you again for coming, and hope to see you another time at another event.